Margaret had always been the quiet strength of the family, the kind of woman who never asked for credit, never kept score, never reminded anyone of the sacrifices she made. At 72, she still moved carefully but confidently around her small blue house at the end of Maple Street. Every corner of that house held a memory. The kitchen walls still carried faint marks from when Daniel was a boy racing toy cars across the table. The hallway closet still smelled faintly of her late husband Harold's cologne. She woke up every morning before sunrise, just as she had for decades. She brewed coffee the way Harold liked it, even though he'd been gone for 7 years. Habits of love are hard to break. When Daniel called one Sunday afternoon and said, "Mom, we're planning a family vacation," her heart leapt like it hadn't in years. She pressed the phone tighter to her ear, smiling like a schoolgirl. "A vacation? Oh, that sounds lovely. Where to?" "Hawaii," he said. "The kids have been begging to see the ocean." Hawaii. Margaret had once circled that word in a travel magazine 40 years ago. She and Harold had promised each other they would go when Daniel finished college. But then college became a wedding. The wedding became grandchildren. Life kept pushing their dreams to the side. "That's wonderful," she said softly. "I haven't seen the ocean in so long." Daniel hesitated. "Well, that's actually what I wanted to talk about." Later that week, they all came over for dinner. Margaret cooked Daniel's favorite pot roast, the one she used to make for him before every big exam. The grandchildren ran through the house, their laughter echoing off the walls. Rebecca scrolled through her phone at the table, occasionally showing Daniel pictures of beaches and hotels. When the plates were cleared and dessert was served, Rebecca cleared her throat. "Margaret," she began sweetly. "We've been thinking about the trip." Margaret smiled. "I've been looking up bathing suits," she joked lightly. Rebecca's smile tightened. "We just think the travel might be too exhausting for you." The room seemed to shrink. Daniel avoided her eyes. "It's a long flight, Mom, and lots of walking. We just don't want you to overdo it." Margaret blinked slowly. "I walk every morning," Rebecca continued, her voice calm but firm. "It might be better if you stayed and watched the house. You know, just in case." Just in case. Margaret looked at her grandchildren. They stared down at their hands. "I see," she said quietly. Daniel reached across the table but didn't quite touch her. "It's just practical, Mom." Practical. She nodded as if it made sense, as if her heart hadn't just cracked open. That night, after they left, she stood alone in the kitchen. The sink was full of dishes. The house was silent again. She pressed her palm against the counter to steady herself. Too old. The words echoed in her mind. She had given birth at 22, worked 2 jobs when Harold got sick, sold her wedding jewelry to help Daniel start his business. She had never once complained, but now she was an inconvenience. She turned off the kitchen light and whispered into the dark, "I didn't know I had an expiration date." The next morning felt heavier than usual. Margaret stepped outside to retrieve the newspaper, wrapping her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. The air was cool, crisp, and quiet. For a moment, she appreciated the stillness. It didn't judge her. It didn't measure her worth. She opened the mailbox. Inside was a thick envelope addressed in Daniel's handwriting. She frowned slightly and pulled it out. Inside were 4 plane tickets. Daniel, Rebecca, Olivia, Mason, round trip, first class. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through them. Hawaii. Tucked inside was a sticky note. "Mom, since you're staying, can you keep these safe? We'll pick them up before we leave. Thanks." Thanks. No apology. No acknowledgement, just an assumption. She stood there for a long time, staring at the destination printed in bold letters. Honolulu, the same place Harold once described after watching a documentary. He had promised her sunsets on the beach. Her throat tightened. They trusted her to guard their tickets, but not to sit beside them on the plane. She walked slowly back into the house and sat at the kitchen table. The morning light streamed through the window, illuminating the tickets like a spotlight. She traced her son's name with her finger. She remembered him at 6 years old, clinging to her skirt on his first day of school. "Don't leave me, Mommy," he had cried. She hadn't. Not once. She remembered the night he called from college, broke and ashamed. She wired him her last savings without hesitation. She remembered Rebecca's tears when they couldn't make rent. Margaret wrote the check. And now, too old to travel. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, she didn't feel fragile. She felt invisible. Invisible is worse. Invisible means you're still there, but no one sees you. Her eyes drifted to the calendar on the wall. The departure date circled in blue ink, 3 days away. Her gaze returned to the tickets. Something unfamiliar stirred inside her. Not anger, not exactly. It was clarity. She folded the tickets neatly and placed them back in the envelope. Then she whispered to herself, "If I'm old enough to guard your dreams, I'm old enough to choose my own." Margaret didn't sleep much that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly above her. The house creaked softly in the darkness, as if even the walls were thinking. She had always believed love meant sacrifice, that mothers give and children receive. That was the natural order, but sacrifice without respect becomes surrender. And she had surrendered enough. The next morning, she brewed her coffee and placed the envelope on the kitchen table in front of her. She put on her reading glasses and carefully examined the details. Non-refundable tickets. She almost laughed at the irony. Non-refundable, just like the years she had given. Her fingers hovered over the phone. She hesitated. Was this petty? Was this cruel? Or was this the first boundary she had ever drawn? She remembered Rebecca's voice. "It might be too exhausting for you." Margaret straightened her spine. She dialed the airline. After navigating automated menus and hold music, a calm voice answered. "How may I assist you today?" "Yes," Margaret said steadily. "I need to cancel 4 tickets." She read the booking number slowly. There was a pause. "I can process that for you. Are you sure?" She closed her eyes briefly. "Yes, I'm sure." The agent confirmed the refund amount, a significant sum. When the call ended, Margaret set the phone down gently. Silence filled the room. Her heart pounded. She expected guilt to crash over her. It didn't. Instead, there was an unfamiliar lightness. She opened her laptop, a device Daniel had insisted she learn to use years ago. Her fingers typed slowly. Senior Travel Tours Hawaii. Dozens of results appeared. Group tours, beachfront hotels, cultural excursions. She clicked one. Photos of silver-haired couples laughing by the ocean filled the screen. They didn't look weak. They looked free. Margaret felt something spark inside her. She called the number listed. By the end of the conversation, she had booked her own ticket, her own hotel room, her own adventure. When she hung up, she looked around her kitchen, the same kitchen where she had cried 2 nights before. This time, she smiled. "They were right about one thing," she whispered. "It is time for a change." The airport buzzed with noise and urgency. Rolling suitcases, overhead announcements, children laughing, travelers rushing. Daniel stood at the check-in counter, tapping his foot impatiently. Rebecca scrolled through her phone while the kids whispered excitedly about snorkeling. The airline agent typed into her computer, then frowned. "I'm sorry, sir. These tickets were canceled." Daniel blinked. "That's not possible." "I'm looking at the system now. They were canceled 3 days ago. Refund processed." Rebecca's head snapped up. "Canceled by who?" The agent glanced at the screen. "The booking contact." Daniel's face drained of color. They drove straight to Margaret's house. Rebecca was furious. How could she do this? That was thousands of dollars. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Let's just talk to her." Margaret was sitting on the porch when they arrived. She wore a light blue dress. A small suitcase rested beside her chair. Daniel marched up the walkway. "Mom, did you cancel our trip?" She looked up calmly. "Yes." Rebecca's voice rose. "Why would you do that?" Margaret folded her hands in her lap. "I needed the money." "For what?" Rebecca demanded. Margaret stood slowly. "For my vacation." Silence crashed over them. Daniel stared at the suitcase. "You're going?" "Yes." "You can't just—" "I can," she said gently. And I did. Her voice wasn't angry, it was steady. You said I was too old to travel with you. I decided I wasn't too old to travel without you. Rebecca opened her mouth, but no words came. Margaret picked up her suitcase. My ride will be here soon. And for the first time in years, Daniel saw something in his mother's eyes he hadn't seen before. Independence. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, blue and shimmering under the Hawaiian sun. Margaret stood at the shoreline, her sandals in one hand, the waves brushing against her feet. She laughed, a full, unrestrained laugh. She had joined a senior travel group. They were from different states, different backgrounds, widows, retirees, adventurers rediscovering life. On the second day, she tried snorkeling. On the third, she attended a luau. She sent herself postcards. Wish you were here, Harold. At sunset, she sat quietly on the beach. The sky burned orange and pink. She realized something profound. Age wasn't limitation. It was experience. Back home, Daniel sat at the kitchen table alone. The house felt different without her presence. He noticed the small repairs she had always handled, the meals she had quietly prepared, the way the house felt warmer when she was there. Regret settled heavily in his chest. He had mistaken her kindness for weakness. When Margaret returned, Daniel was waiting at the airport. He looked tired, older somehow. He stepped forward as she approached. Mom, she paused. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Not defensive, not angry, just honest. You were right, he continued. We took you for granted. Margaret studied his face. The little boy who once clung to her was still there. I didn't cancel your trip to hurt you, she said softly. I canceled it because I needed you to see me. Daniel swallowed. I see you now. At dinner that night, the grandchildren hugged her tightly. Rebecca remained quiet. Margaret sat at the head of the table. I may be older, she said calmly, but I am not disposable. No one argued. Months later, Daniel booked another trip, 5 tickets. He handed her one personally, but this time Margaret smiled and said, I'll let you know, because respect isn't automatic, it's earned, and Margaret had finally remembered her worth.